So uh, I want you to picture the most, exhausting family member you have,
Oh, boy.
right? Like the one who makes your blood pressure just absolutely spike before they even finish knocking on your front door.
Yeah, I mean, we all have that one person. You just brace yourself.
Exactly. You brace yourself. But, well, what if I told you that legally, biologically, and morally, you owe them absolutely nothing? Like zero.
That's a pretty jarring thought, isn't it?
It really is. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, what if keeping them in your life, just out of a sense of obligation, is actually a fundamental insult to your very existence?
Wow. I mean, we are just so deeply conditioned to accept the friction of family as like a mandatory tax we just have to pay for being alive.
Hmm.
You sit at the holiday table, you bite your tongue when the passive-aggressive comments start, you pass the potatoes, and you just endure it. We rarely pause to question the table itself.
Right. We just accept it.
Yeah.
Because, well, they're family. You share DNA, so you share the burden.
Yeah.
But what if that entire concept, like the biological, the legal, and cultural ties that supposedly bind us to our relatives, what if all of that was completely dismantled?
Which is exactly what we're getting into today.
Yes, welcome to today's deep dive. We are looking at a highly provocative 2011 essay by an author named Schwiffing, and it's titled Bombard the Traditional Family.
That is an intense title.
It really is. And our mission today is to objectively explore a text that radically attempts to strip away all the biology, all the duty, and all the tradition from the concept of family,
Leaving behind what, exactly?
leaving behind only one incredibly strict requirement for membership.
Okay, and we should probably establish right up front for you, the listener, that the views in this essay are, well, they're intense.
Okay.
They directly challenge some of the most deeply seated cultural and biological norms in, like, all of human history. So we are not here to endorse this author's viewpoint, nor are we here to condemn it.
Right, exactly. Our goal is simply to impartially explore this fascinating, completely controversial philosophical framework. We want to see what actually happens when you take a sledgehammer to the family tree.
Yeah, but before we can start, firing our uncles and cousins, we really have to look at how this author views existence itself.
Okay, let's unpack this.
Yeah.
Because you're saying you can't understand his view on relatives without first understanding his baseline for human life.
Precisely. The text argues that the purpose of life is absolutely not just to survive. He says we aren't here to live like insects, wild animals, or livestock.
Like just surviving, reproducing, and dying, just because biology dictates we must.
Right. What's fascinating here is how he systematically dismisses almost every traditional reason humans have ever used to find meaning.
Oh, wow. Like what?
Well, for thousands of years, human societies have been built on the idea of collective duty. You survive by contributing to the tribe or the village or the nation.
Mm-hmm. Your individual happiness was usually, like, totally secondary to the survival and stability of the group?
Exactly, but Svefing states that life is not about redemption. It's not about completing a mission or fulfilling responsibilities, and it's certainly not about propagating offspring or serving a religion or a political party.
He even goes so far as to say life isn't about sacrificing yourself for justice, ideals, or truth. Which, I mean, that is a wild departure from how we usually measure human greatness.
Yeah, it really flips the script.
Because those are the exact things we build statues of people for. Like, we celebrate the martyr. We celebrate the person who puts their own happiness aside for the greater good.
We do. But Svefing writes that the only valid purpose of life is to achieve joy, happiness, freedom, and fulfillment. Period.
Wow.
Any other reason for living is described in the text as an insult to and destruction of life.
So it's like a pure pursuit of happiness.
Right. That is where he edges into a form of, well, extreme utilitarianism or pure philosophical hedonism. By establishing personal joy and freedom as the ultimate non-negotiable baseline of existence, he sets the stage for everything else. He is arguing that if you are acting out of obligation rather than joy, you are fundamentally wasting your consciousness.
I was trying to visualize this, and it feels like a total rebranding of how we experience time. Like, traditionally, we're taught to treat life as a contracted job.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
You punch a clock, you pay off your moral debts, you fulfill your obligations to your community, and maybe, if you're lucky, you get a little retirement of joy at the very end.
A little reward for all the suffering.
Right. But this philosophy treats life like an exclusive ticket to an amusement park.
Yeah.
You didn't ask to be dropped into the amusement park, but now that you're standing here, the only rule is to enjoy the rides.
Just ride the roller coasters.
Exactly. But I have to push back on this a little bit. Is a life entirely devoid of duty or sacrifice actually fulfilling? I mean, you go to an amusement park and only eat cotton candy, you're going to make yourself sick. Doesn't removing all the friction also remove the texture of life?
Well, that is the eternal debate with this kind of philosophy, right? Do we need the bitter to appreciate the sweet?
Right.
But the author is unflinching on this. He argues that a life burdened by heavy loads, constant pressures, and unfulfilling obligations has absolutely no value to the individual experiencing it.
Not at all.
He doesn't deny that friction exists. He denies that we should actively choose to retain people or structures that solely generate friction without a massive return on joy.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Because once he establishes that joy and freedom are the only valid purposes of life, he takes that exact same filter and applies it directly to the concept of family members.
Yeah, and the result is pretty blunt.
Brutally blunt. He establishes a definition. Family members are only those who bring us joy, happiness, freedom, and fulfillment.
So conditional.
Entirely. If they bring trouble, pain, sadness, anxiety, or fear, they're not family.
He is shifting family from being a biological, oh, absolutely, something determined by DNA and birth certificates, to a highly conditional emotional state. It's entirely dependent on how those people impact your psychological well-being on a daily basis.
It is literally like applying a ruthless corporate audit to your personal life.
Yes.
Imagine bringing in like a management consultant to evaluate your family tree, and they just start identifying the underperforming assets.
Just cutting the dead weight.
Right. You look at your grandparents, right? The essay says, well, if they don't bring you joy, they are merely our parents' parents.
Ouch.
I know, that's their biological title, but they don't get the title of family. Same goes for aunts, uncles, cousins. If they don't hit the key performance indicators of joy and freedom, they're out.
The corporate audit analogy is perfect because it highlights the revocation of what we might call the unearned lifetime appointment.
The unearned lifetime appointment. I like that.
Right. In most cultures, being a grandfather or an aunt comes with an assumed level of respect and a guaranteed seat at the table simply because of your position on the tray.
Because of biology.
Yeah, but the author is completely revoking those lifetime appointments. Under this framework, you have to earn the title of family continuously through the emotional value you provide.
But hold on. Let's play this out in the real world. Say, my cousin borrows my John Deere lawnmower, completely ruins the engine, and then refuses to pay for it.
Okay.
That causes me significant anxiety and anger. By Su Feng's logic, do I just sever the biological tie over a lawnmower? Like, is it really that transactional?
Well, the philosophy isn't necessarily arguing that a single minor annoyance disqualifies someone from human connection forever.
Okay, good.
It's focusing on the systemic emotional return on investment. If your cousin consistently brings anxiety, uses you, and, drains your freedom without ever contributing to your joy, then yes.
He's gone.
The author would argue that maintaining a family label for that person is basically an act of self-harm. You are clinging to a biological coincidence at the expense of your own brief existence.
But what about protective pain?
Yeah.
This is where the binary nature of his joy test feels, impossible to me.
What do you mean?
Let's say I have to take away my aging father's car keys for his own safety. That conversation causes him immense pain, fear, and anger. And it causes me anxiety.
Right. No one is happy there.
Exactly. Neither of us is experiencing joy in that moment. Does the author leave any room for doing something painful because it's genuinely necessary? Or does that instantly disqualify me as his family?
Oh, that is the profound tension in the text. Xu Feng is highly skeptical of the concept of causing pain for someone else's benefit.
Really?
In fact, later in the text, he specifically attacks the phrase, "I'm doing this for your own good."
Oh, wow.
He views that phrase as a classic manipulative tool used by traditional family structures to enforce compliance, conformity, and control.
Okay, I can see how that gets used manipulatively, sure.
Right. In his view, genuine care shouldn't rely on suppression or control. So, to your car keys example, he might argue that if a relationship has devolved purely into management and mutual anxiety, it has ceased to be a family dynamic.
What is it then?
It has become an administrative burden.
Administrative burden. That is a staggering way to view human connection. It means navigating what I would call the severance package of guilt.
The severance package of guilt.
Yeah, because we are biologically and socially wired to feel extremely guilty if we abandon our relatives. But Sweffing is saying the guilt is artificial. It's just a societal construct designed to keep you trapped.
Precisely. He wants you to view that guilt not as a moral failing on your part, but as proof of how deeply the traditional family structure has conditioned you to accept your own unhappiness.
So what does this all mean? Like, if firing an uncle or a cousin for causing anxiety is one thing, this logic hits a massive wall when we talk about the people who actually created us. Does Zweffing really apply this joy-only metric to our parents?
He does, and this is where the text challenges the very core of how global society functions.
Oh boy.
The author argues that parents who bring pressure, obligations, and suppression are not family. Instead, he assigns them a very specific clinical label. He calls them creditors.
Creditors.
Yeah,
Like a bank calling to collect on a loan you didn't even know you took out.
exactly. And to justify this, he dives into a philosophical argument about the consent of birth. This raises an important question, right? He writes that the parents' decision to give birth to and raise a child was their own choice.
Right.
The child was never consulted. The parents decided to bring the child into what the author specifically calls a difficult, crisis-filled world purely for their own reasons.
It's like receiving a heavy, complicated package in the mail
Yeah.
that you never ordered, but then the sender suddenly demands that you pay for shipping, handling, and a lifelong subscription fee out of gratitude.
That's a fantastic analogy.
It's wild. The author says parents can't claim that everything they did was for the child because creating the child was fundamentally a self-serving act. If they truly wanted to spare the child from hardship, they wouldn't have forced them into a world of suffering to begin with.
Which taps into a broader philosophical concept known as antinatalism.
That's antinatalism.
Yeah, it's the idea that bringing new life into a world that guarantees suffering is inherently problematic. By framing the world as dangerous and crisis-filled, Shuefeng assigns the entirety of the moral burden to the creators.
Wow.
He flips the traditional concept of filial piety entirely upside down.
Filial piety being the ancient idea that you owe your parents an unpayable debt of respect simply because they gave you the gift of life.
Right. In many cultures, filial piety is the absolute bedrock of morality. But Shuefeng says the duty flows downwards, not upwards.
Because there was no consent.
Because the parents brought the child into existence without asking, it is the parents' absolute duty to raise the child and to create an environment where that child can experience joy, freedom, and fulfillment. The creator holds the moral obligation, not the created.
And if the parents fail to provide that joyful environment and instead they bring pressure, criticism, and demands for repayment, whether that's financial repayment or just emotional repayment in the form of demanded visits and obedience, they aren't parents anymore. They're just creditors trying to collect on a debt the child never agreed to.
And if you're a listener right now, especially if you're a parent, this might feel incredibly abrasive.
Oh, absolutely.
We are biologically hardwired to view the parent-child bond as sacred. To hear it described in terms of creditors and non-consensual contracts is deeply unsettling.
Yeah, if you're listening to this and feeling a little defensive, you definitely aren't alone. It is jarring. Which makes me wonder how he views the children we choose to have.
Right.
If parents are potential creditors, how does he categorize the kids? Does the biological imperative to love your offspring survive this philosophy?
No, even children are not exempt from the audit.
Wow.
If children do not bring joy, the author frames them purely as the result of past life karmic debts.
Karmic debts?
Yes. They are either creditors coming to collect or debtors coming to pay, and your only purpose with them is to settle the accounts.
Okay, we need to pause and explain the mechanics of that. When he says karmic debts, is he talking about literal reincarnation? Like where my toddler is actually the soul of a landlord I ripped off in the 1800s? Or is this a metaphor?
It functions more as a mechanism to explain why we feel irrationally bound to people who completely drain us.
Okay, that makes more sense.
Whether you take it literally or metaphorically, the concept of karmic debt explains the heavy, unearned emotional baggage that certain relationships carry. If a child brings nothing but anxiety, trouble, and a drain on your freedom, Kuofeng uses the concept of karma to say, this is not a joyful family bond, this is a transactional debt being settled by the universe.
It's reframing the struggle entirely.
Exactly. Once you view it as a debt rather than a sacred family bond, you stop expecting joy from it, and you stop letting it define your ultimate purpose.
Wow, so you just stop romanticizing the struggle.
Yeah.
You accept it as a debt and move on. And what about the people we actively choose to partner up with? Like spouses, siblings.
Siblings are dismissed as merely childhood playmates or companions on the journey of life.
Just playmates.
Unless they bring consistent joy, the biological link means nothing. You just happen to share a sandbox for a few years.
What about spouses, though? You choose them.
And when it comes to spouses, the text views marriage with heavy skepticism. The author actually quotes an old saying, spouses are enemies.
Enemies.
Yes. He questions what qualifies them as family if they aren't actively bringing happiness and freedom to one another.
Spouses as enemies, kids as karmic debts, parents as creditors, siblings as random playmates. I have to ask, doesn't this worldview seem incredibly lonely?
It really does sound like it.
Is the author building a fortress of ultimate personal freedom? Or is he just building a really well-defended island of isolation? Like if you cut everyone off the minute they cause friction, who is actually left?
That is the most common critique of hyper-individualistic philosophies. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it's crucial to understand that Shuifeng isn't necessarily arguing for total human isolation.
He's not.
No, he is arguing that traditional biological family structures are uniquely designed to trap us. The people who most often hold us back from what he calls the kingdom of freedom are traditional family members, precisely because they use biological obligation as a weapon.
That goes back to the phrase you mentioned earlier, I'm doing this for your own good.
Exactly. Who uses that phrase most often? Parents, spouses, older siblings. It is a phrase used to justify actions that cause anxiety or limit your freedom, all under the guise of familial love.
It's wild to think of love as a guise for control.
And the author even pulls in a quote from Jesus to back up his point, noting, "A man's enemies will be the members of his own household."
Wow, okay.
He posits that because traditional family members have the most access to you, they are the ones most likely to bring you trouble, pain, debt, repression, and despair.
So if the biological family brings all these shackles, where does the joy actually come from?
Yeah.
If we chop down the traditional family tree, what are we planting in its place? Who is the family in this framework?
He claims that true joy and happiness have largely been brought to us by nature, which he refers to as the greatest creator,
Okay.
and partly through our own labor, our creations, and our selfless contributions to the world. But crucially, he says joy also comes from people who are not traditionally considered family.
Oh,
He is advocating for a community that is actively chosen based entirely on mutual fulfillment rather than settling for the community you were assigned at birth.
it's the ultimate chosen family argument, but taken to its absolute logical extreme.
Exactly.
You don't just add friends to your existing family tree, you uproot the original tree completely, throw it in the wood chipper, and plant a new one from scratch, using only seeds of joy.
And it demands a level of emotional honesty that most people would find absolutely terrifying.
Very terrifying.
To look at the people you have been culturally commanded to love your entire life and evaluate them strictly on the reality of how they actually make you feel.
Terrifying is exactly the right word, because it forces you to face the reality of your relationships without the safety net of tradition to catch you.
Right.
If you realize your relationship with your family is purely based on guilt and debt, what do you do with that information? Which brings us to the core takeaway of today's deep dive.
Yes.
The essay ends with a very definitive, almost triumphant sign-off. Goodbye, family. It takes a sledgehammer to biological obligations, trying to rebuild human connection strictly on the foundation of personal joy and freedom.
It is a radical proposition. It asks you to perform a ruthless energy audit on your own life. Consider how much of your daily social and familial energy is spent out of a sense of obligation, debt, or guilt. And then compare that to how much of that energy is actually yielding genuine joy and fulfillment. For many people, the resulting math is deeply uncomfortable.
Which brings us right back to that family dinner table we talked about at the very beginning. The potatoes are being passed.
The passive aggression is flowing.
Right. The intrusive questions about your career or your dating life are being asked. But this time, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over on your own.
Okay.
If you took Zhu Feng's incredibly strict joy and freedom test and you applied it to your own life today, stripping away all the biological, legal, and cultural ties, completely ignoring who would actually remain on your list of family.
That's a tough question.
And perhaps a lot more uncomfortably. Perhaps a lot more uncomfortably. If the people in your life applied that exact same brutal test to you, whose list would you still be on?